This is Enter the Gungeon when you've been playing for more than 60 hours, every character unlocked, almost everything you can buy in the stores, and mostly everything unlocked for guns and items. But this is the Gungeon when you first start, and your first run will probably go something like this. So the question is, what is Enter the Gungeon? Well, in simple terms, Enter the Gungeon is a bullet hell roguelike developed by Dodge Roll and published by Devolver Digital, released in 2016, where you must shoot, dodge roll, and table flip your way to victory and gain the ultimate treasure, the gun that can kill the past. Sounds easy, right? Well, no, because you must survive the Gungeon, a series of challenging and revolving floors that are filled with the dangerous gundead and their fearsome bosses, all stopping you from reaching your goal. And as you progress further down the Gungeon, the gundead and their bosses become even more dangerous. To survive, you'll need to gather resources, discover secrets, talk with merchants and shopkeepers to buy powerful items, and gather a wide variety of guns. The gimmick of the game is that everything is themed around guns. Enemies of various forms of bullets, the currency is shell, and you'll have various guns to help you in your runs. The first thing you have to know before you even enter the Gungeon or even think about playing is that this game is hard. And I mean very hard, and you'll probably die a lot without making any progress. The Gungeon doesn't mess around, and you'll need to be on your toes through every run from start to end, because if you're not careful, you'll die quickly. But who are the brave ones to take on the Gungeon? Well, your fellow Gungeoneers, of course. There's the convict, hunter, marine, pilot, and in co-op, the cultist, each with their own paths to defeat, different attributes, and starting guns. Now, it is time to take on the Gungeon. Once you've chosen your character, you can enter the Gungeon. There are 5 chambers of the Gungeon, with each chamber increasing in difficulty. The first being relatively easy with the easiest enemies, and the fifth being the most difficult with the most difficult enemies. Each chamber is filled with rooms of enemies, traps, chests, and sometimes nothing. You'll have to navigate yourself to the boss room, defeat the boss, and advance to the next chamber, until of course you reach the final chamber and beat the game. Sounds simple, right? No, because there's a lot more going on in the Gungeon. Stopping you from reaching your goal is the gundead, all armed to the teeth to kill you. They are ruthless, are special, and will try to kill you with every form of weapon they can find. Each room will be filled with them, and you'll need to understand their strengths and weaknesses to defeat them. But that's not all. Before you reach the end of the chamber, you'll come across their bosses, more powerful than any enemy you faced before. Let's talk about gameplay. Enter the Gungeon is a roguelike. There are 5 main chambers that you have to defeat, first being the easiest and the fifth being the hardest. And while each chamber will be different, there are certain things that will always be the same. The theme around what the chamber is, a store, the boss room, and 2 chest rooms. Whenever you enter a room, it'll be filled with enemies. You can't leave the room until you defeat all the enemies in there, so you'll have to use your luck, skill, and the various items to not only get through each room, but defeat the bosses and of course beat the Gungeon. Once you defeat the enemies, the room will allow you to go through and move into the next room, and you'll basically do that through every single chamber. You can defeat the boss at any point if you want to, but once you do defeat the boss, you can leave for so whenever you want to. But you have to gather resources, and the way to do that is to find chests or maybe a shopkeeper in other places. Once you use the key to unlock a chest, you can gain a variety of things. Items, keys, hearts, but most importantly, a gun. That's right, the most important thing in this game is a gun. While you have your starting gun is good, it eventually becomes quite troublesome to use as you go deeper into the Gungeon. So collecting guns is the only way for you to not only get better in defeating enemies, but to go further into the Gungeon. And guns come in a variety of sizes, have different attributes, deal different damage. Some will shoot poison, some shoot in the beams, some shoot only once, some have weird mechanics to have them shoot. You name it, it probably is somewhere in there that you have to find some weird guns. Some guns will be better in rooms, in clearing out enemies and making sure you defeat them much quickly. But some guns will be better for bosses. This is where the guns become a juggling act. Not only will you choose which gun is built for which situation, but you'll also have to juggle ammo. Your starting gun has unlimited ammo, but the other guns you pick up do not. So you'll have to make sure you don't waste all the ammo on just trying to destroy one enemy. but then you get to the boss room and you have none of your good guns to use for them. And that's how you'll be basically running around collecting things to make sure that your run gets better. Along with guns, you can also pick up items. There are two different types, active and passive. You can only carry one active item, and you can use an active item whenever you want. Once you do use an active item, it goes on a cooldown, and the cooldown only goes further down if you're in combat, meaning you can't just stand outside, make sure it comes back up, and then wait to get into the next room and use it. No, it only happens in combat. Then you have passive items, and you can collect a huge amount of passive items to help you in them. So mixing it with passive, active items and guns will make this game really, really fun. And sometimes you just don't get really good RNG and you hardly get any good passive items or active items. And passive items can come in like in a variety of things. Some that are really, really good, some that are pointless, and sometimes you can even get companions that are really helpful in helping you get further into the gungeon. Now, you'll quickly find yourself clearing rooms, choosing which enemies to kill first, conserving ammo, but to master the gungeon, you'll need to master the dodge roll. While you can walk around bullets, dodging bullets will become the most important thing because you won't always be able to do so. So you'll have to use a dodge roll to dodge over the bullets. This is the most important skill to learn and master if you want to not only defeat bosses, but actually get good at the game. Timing is everything. Think about it as a parry in most games. Rolling too early or too late will hurt you. Rolling into the bullet is the usual way to go. But if you roll incorrectly, you'll run into another bullet or get hit. There's always a time difference between when you can roll again, so you can't just spam it. Rolling isn't also important for dodging, but also for jumping over pitfalls and dodging traps. Now, rooms will be filled with various things as well. As I said before, there can be traps that you can use to your advantage to defeat enemies. There are pitfalls as well, which you can even kill enemies with. Explosive barrels, poison things, anything that hurt you may also hurt the enemy as well. But most rooms won't have any protection whatsoever, except some tables, where you can actually flip the tables over and give you some sort of cover in case of any such an emergency. But if you really can't dodge any bullets, you can always use a blank, which clears the screen of all bullets and makes you get out of any sticky situations. The only issue is you have two. Lastly, there are shopkeepers. You'll find a shopkeeper in every single chamber who will offer you various things that you can buy. Blanks, guns, ammo, health, keys, you name it, they at least will sell something there in your help. Now these can get pretty pricey, and you'll just have to make sure you manage that as well. The most important thing though is to make sure you don't shoot any store. Oh my god! Now that you know the basics of a run, let's give you a hold on some of the many secrets and many things that the game doesn't tell you. And the gungeon holds many secrets, such as secret walls, mysterious keys, expensive items, chambers. But before I go further any more into this, I want to give you a little story on how I came across playing Enter the Gungeon. You see, this game changed how I played games. Enter the Gungeon doesn't tell you a lot, and many things you'll never figure out on your own. And using a guide will help you enjoy this game so much more. I was never really good at Enter the Gungeon. Maybe because I was playing it on my Switch and I'm usually much more better on a PlayStation, but I kept dying repeatedly, and I felt like I was getting nowhere with the game. That wasn't until I decided to finally get good. I watched others play the game. I started to gain some knowledge about the game's many secrets. I looked at the wiki, I looked at guides, just to figure out what do I need to do in this game. And while I wanted to figure out many things on my own, I really couldn't. And if I didn't find a guide or some sort of way to learn some of the mechanics, I don't think I would have enjoyed Enter the Gungeon as much as I did. So now I'm going to tell you some of those hidden mechanics of the game. While you might think this is spoiling, I think these are really good tips just to help you enjoy the game much more, especially if you're having trouble with it. So here's the first couple of tips that I should give you. 1. Put a cursor on. It's one of the most important things you want, but the sight is really difficult and really hard. If you're really finding a hard time shooting enemies, make sure you put the sight on, so you can at least see where you're shooting. Make sure the game is sped up even outside of combat. This just allows you to navigate the floor much longer and much quicker because floors can get really big. You can transport between rooms, but it's just much faster if you want to get from one room to another. Also, make sure that the minimap is always displayed. If you don't put this on whenever you enter a room, you have no idea how the room is as the minimap disappears. It only comes back after you've killed everyone and the room is cleared. Make sure this is always on so that when you do walk into a room, you get to see what the room is like. This allows you to assess how to move and how to always keep moving in the game. Another way that I always recommend is to always keep moving. make sure you never really stand still in certain situations. While you can still stand still in some situations, make sure you're always moving in a certain direction. This is make sure that enemies don't try to gang up behind you, they don't try to shoot you in one way, and that you never find yourself boxed in. And also, be very careful of traps, and especially pitfalls. I die a lot to pitfalls. So now that I give you a couple of tips, how do you truly complete the gungeon? Well, that is tied to the most mysterious item of all, the bullet to the past. You see, every character you have in the game has a mysterious past that you need to beat. In order to do that, you need to craft the bullet to the past. The only way to do this is by collecting certain items through various runs. At certain points in certain chambers, you'll see an item that you need to get and bring to the shopkeeper on chamber 5. That is the only way you can craft the bullet. Once crafted, you complete the gungeon, put the bullet into the gun that can shoot to the past, and then you will be sent to that character's past. And you'll need to beat that character's past with the certain items that are given to you. That will help you unlock alter tires, items for other runs, and eventually alt weapons for those characters. It's important that is how you really complete the gungeon, because the bullet is the most important thing in the game. But once you get all those items, you can do it. And sometimes getting to those items can be the most difficult. I think the first one of the most difficult ones to get, is like in chamber 3 when you're trying to get to the other side. There's simple ways where you can get it, but it's really difficult to do. But the game also has other hidden mechanics, and without a guide you'll never notice. You'll see something, but you won't know what it is. There is an element called curse. Now curse is kind of like a hard mode in the game. At certain points you can either buy a cursed item, find a cursed item, or even pick up a cursed item or open up a cursed chest. This makes it at certain points where enemies will glow this bright red. It means that they are much harder to kill, taking much more damage, and they will give much more damage. But you also get more rewards. You can also increase your curse by getting more items that have curse, or by just standing in cursed jars. The more curse you get, the more enemies will turn red, and then of course the more rewards you will get. So it's kind of like make the game harder, but also get more rewards. The only issue is if you get too much curse, you'll be followed by an immortal Grim Reaper that you can't kill. So that's a big problem. The other mechanic is called synergies. Think of it as a combo. Sometimes you'll pick up items or guns that are held at the same time or produce a unique effect. These are mostly advantages to you, and they're mostly powerful, and some of them are also completely useless. And you'll need to see which synergy works. Again, there are a lot of synergies in the game. Too much to count, and it would be impossible to list them all. But you'll ever see at one point the two guns or two items will link up, and it will create some sort of advantage for you. It's always important to try to at least figure out one or two synergies, so that when you do see an item or a gun, you'll know what it is. And this can really help you, especially for certain guns where they could have this very big weakness, but if you pick up the synergy to either be it the gun or the item, can really make that weapon really powerful. There are also secret chambers that can only be accessed by meeting certain conditions, and these secret chambers will have different enemies and bosses. The only reason you really want to go into these chambers is to get more items, or just to get more money or rewards to help better your run. So you don't always have to do them, but sometimes you need to do them if you try to get something else. You'll also come across characters that you'll need to save in your run. These characters will show up in the breach or show up during your runs, and they will be added to your hub world. This is where you can buy money that you receive by defeating bosses to gain more items or guns, or even do the famous rainbow run. A lot has been added to the game through the various updates. They've added in extra chambers such as the secret chambers, items, mini bosses, bosses themselves that act differently, hidden bosses, and most importantly the sixth chamber, the bullet hell chamber. But probably the thing they've added the most are the extra characters, and each character has a different way to unlock. So I'm going to give you a little bit on how to unlock some of these characters and their strengths and weaknesses. First off, there's the Paradox, probably one of the easiest to unlock. You'll find a weird riff on the floor, adorn it as the skin, and beat the gungeon. You'll then be given the ability to play as the Paradox, where you will start with two random weapons, one that you'll have from any starting characters, and a passive item. The bullet is a much more, difficult one. It's not too difficult to unlock, it's probably the second easiest. If you always wanted to play as a murderous bullet, now's your chance. Whenever you enter a room or at certain points, you'll see a bullet wearing a cape. Make sure that bullet is the last one left alive and he'll eventually disappear. After 5 times, you'll unlock the bullet. He has the ability to deflect bullets with his sword, and if you have full health, it can even shoot out a sword. It's quite fun to play as the bullet, but his weapon kind of is the best one to use because it can deflect bullets. The robot is much more difficult to unlock. You'll need to find a busted TV somewhere in chamber 2 after you fall into the elevator shaft. If you beat the gungeon with it, you unlock the robot. But the only issue is that whenever you dodge, the TV falls. And you'll need to make sure you can pick it up whenever you leave a room, because if you don't, you'll forget it. The robot is a much more of a different challenge. His starting weapon is actually pretty good, but instead of using health, he uses armor, so it can make much more of a little bit more of a challenge. Lastly is probably the character that everyone talks about when you're playing this game, and that is the Gunslinger. The most difficult character to unlock, but the most powerful character to unlock. You see, you have to play the game as the Paradox. Beat the Leech, and then you unlock a one with the Gunslinger. But the thing is, you still haven't unlocked the Gunslinger. You'll now need to beat that one with the Gunslinger, and beat the Leech with him in a very special boss fight, and only then do you unlock the Gunslinger. But the Gunslinger is probably one of the best characters to play. He's the most powerful character in the game because whatever gun he picks up, he gains immediate synergy with. Even if it doesn't have the item or the required gun, he'll get synergy. So it's actually a really fun time to play as the Gunslinger, especially if you're looking to unlock certain things. Lastly, there's the Cultist, a character that can only be used in co-op. The second player will play as this character while you can choose any of the other characters. And I have to say, this is where the game can actually get a lot more fun. If you have a friend who's at least somewhat competent with bullet hells or roguelikes, or at least is good at dodging the game, this can make the game so much more fun and a lot easier to play, especially if you are struggling with it. When you are in co-op, you can share items between one another, you can share guns between one another, and you have a whole bunch of ways to make sure you guys don't die. If one character does die, he turns into a ghost and he can be used himself as a small little blank. You can also find your friend inside other chests as well later on and just pick it up. So that's one thing I will say. Just make sure your friend is good, because if he isn't, you'll be having to rescue him a lot. But what is great is that even if you play as the Gunslinger and you play as somebody as the co-op player, as the Cultist, they will gain synergy as well. So it's a good way just to have some fun and play the Gungeon with a friend. And again, this is completely all free updates that's been added to the game. And that's not even all the secrets. There are shrines, the resourceful rat, companions, and even the mysterious Mr. Junkin. And that's basically everything about the Enter the Gungeon. I love this game. I own it on multiple systems, and you can find it on the Switch, the PlayStation, consoles, PC. It's basically almost everywhere. I've played so many hours of it, and I never get tired of playing this title. It's just always fun to start a run, see how far I can go, and there are even things I still haven't done yet. I still haven't beaten some of the other secrets in the game. I still haven't found some of the hidden bosses that are lying around, and I still haven't beaten the resourceful rat. I still really suck at it. The game regularly goes on sale, so if you pick it up for a very cheap price, you get a lot of content in here, especially since you can play it with a friend. You will have plenty of fun, and there are hours of secrets that you can find and play not only alone, but with a friend. Enter the Gungeon gets my seal of approval as a must play, and I recommend for you that you haven't played it, go check it out. It's a real fun time. Also, shout out to Retromation. It's a channel where he plays a lot of roguelikes. I got really good at Enter the Gungeon by watching his Unlock Everything run that he did, which is like 100 episodes or something. So if you really want to get really good at the game or see a lot of the other secrets and mechanics that you can get, go watch that Let's Play. It's really, really good, and it really helped me enjoy the game a lot more.